All right, welcome everyone. It is my pleasure to welcome everyone to our webinar today on 5 reasons that aesthetic practices fail and really what to do about it. Today, it's my pleasure, I'm on behalf of Advice Media to welcome Bob Rullo to our webinar. Bob has over 30 years experience in consulting aesthetic practices. I've spoken with Bob many times on various panels and various forums and gotten to know him. I've attended his meeting as well and really appreciate the approach that he takes from an educational standpoint. And I believe you're going to really enjoy hearing Bob present today. If you have any questions, we have our questions panel, which you'll see on the right. There are a few polls that we're going to be putting out there as well as we get started. So your participation in that will help us out too. So look forward to again being with you, and at the end of this, we'll be able to get really to the QA of everything. So if you do have some questions, please put them here, and I'll be able to facilitate those questions directly to Bob at the end of the presentation. All right, well, Bob, with that, let me go ahead and give you the controls.
Well, thanks, Chad. I appreciate the opportunity to be a part of this. I wanted to make sure that we were all in sync here. Can everyone see my screen?
You see it on our end, Bob, yes.
Okay, great. Again, I want to say thank you to Chad and Advice Media for inviting me to participate in this program. I'm not sure if it's the first one you've done, but I highly applaud the idea and the concept of doing some webinars that focus on different subject matters and topics related to aesthetic medicine. Chad said I've been in the business for 30 years and working with aesthetic practices that long. I'm not sure if they've been with aesthetic practices, but I've certainly been in the industry that long, and I've had great success working with really practices all over the country, and I've interfaced with practitioners from all over the world, really, in helping them design strategies and tactics to really help them take their practices to the next level. Learned quite a few things through our seminars and through these one-on-one coaching sessions. But the one thing I wanted to do before we get started, if that's possible, is to ask a couple of quick questions. That way I'll have a good sense of your background and to whom I'm speaking to. So Chad, if you wouldn't mind asking the first survey question, what I'd like to know is, those that are participating, one question: do you own your own practice or not? If we could take that poll.
Yeah, we'll give you just a few more, got 15 more seconds to answer that. All right, we'll go ahead and give you 5 more seconds. So there's our results today, Bob.
I don't see those, Chad. I'll have to maybe get off of my...
Okay, so we're about 53% of the group attending here today do not own, and 47% do own their or a partnership with the practice.
Great.
Almost half.
And then how about the second question then? I'd like to find out the specialty breakdown. So the question would be, what's your specialty? Cosmetic dermatology, oculoplastic, facial plastic, etc.
Perfect. Got that pull up there as well.
Should we be humming, or is there any kind of music?
We need a little music here, don't we? Give everyone just about 5 more seconds. We've got most everyone who's voted. All right, so our breakdown, we've got 8% dermatology, 50% plastic cosmetic surgery, 8% oculoplastics, and 33% other.
Okay, great. So it's a decent breakdown with more of a focus on plastic and cosmetic, which is fantastic. And then let's go to the last question, and this is more of an opinion question, and that is, what do you think the #1 driver is in an aesthetic patient's decision-making process. And I just listed just a handful of things here that you might want to consider, like how long the results last, cost, their recommendations from friends, physicians' training and expertise, or how long it takes for the results to actually show. Pick one of those. I'm just curious.
Give everyone just a few more seconds. All right, the poll is closing. So the results, interesting. Perception is at 0%. Think about how long the results last. 36% overall cost as a decision-making, number one decision-making. Peer recommendations, 43%. Physicians' training and expertise at 14%. And how quickly results appear at 7%.
Very impressive, very impressive. Well, if I could actually show you the results of a study that was done, and this will help us kick off this particular presentation. The studies done a couple of years ago that actually asked patients this very question. What is the number one thing to help you drive your decision in selecting a aesthetic practice or procedure? And by far, the number one reason was the physician's training and expertise, far and away more than the overall cost of the procedure or the actual result. And I found this to be a very impressive result in the sense that even though we have this natural tendency to think that patients' decisions are being driven by cost or specific treatment and things like that, it really turns out to be by head and shoulders the number one reason why patients, what they did, how they make their decision is based on your expertise and your training. And I applaud you for participating in this program, because I realize you're taking time out of your day where you could be seeing patients or doing some other things, but you're actually investing in your training and your expertise. And this is a really important thing, and I applaud you for doing that. Now, the topic of today's conversation is called 5 Reasons That Businesses Fail. I think Chad added in there 5 reasons why aesthetic businesses fail. But it really is a general, more broader discussion as to what goes on with businesses and why do they fail, and really what to do about it. Because my whole existence in this space as a performance coach, as a business coach, is to really help my clients understand what are the blind spots, what are the things that can trip them up as aesthetic practitioners that are really preventing them from going to the next level. And this is really what this is all about.
Let me interject just real quick. Will you push the play button on your little side screen so we can see your slides?
Sorry, Chad. I would play.
Yes.
Which one is that?
In the screen sharing, there's a little button on the play one, so we can see your actual screen.
I'm not sure which one that is. Is it show?
It is show. Yes. There we go.
How's
Perfect. Yep, perfect. Hit play and we're good to go. Thank you.
All right. Sorry about that. It's a good thing this talk isn't on technology. So let me go back and show you this slide that I had just referenced. There's my key title slide. This is the slide I was referencing, as it relates to the results of that poll. So you can see by far the physician's training and expertise was the number one decision making for patients, which I think is very impressive. But again, this idea of why businesses fail, I think, has been a very intriguing thing, and something that I've really been tracking for the longest time. I've been in business a long time, and it's always been amazing to me how some businesses can thrive and some businesses just seem to fail. Now, what's really interesting is some of these cold, hard facts, that 50% of all new businesses fail within the first 5 years. Think about that. Within the first 5 years, 50% of all new business ventures are gone. 96% of all businesses are gone within 10 years. That's even more stunning. And the 4% that are still around may not even be profitable. You know, I live out here in the Silicon Valley, and everybody's an entrepreneur out here, right? Everybody's trying to figure out a new way to do business. But what's interesting is that 8 out of 10 entrepreneurs fail within the first 18 months. And it really makes one scratch their head and try to understand, you know, why that is. And if you go a step further and look at some of the businesses that have been around a while for years, I mean, Kodak, Blockbuster Video, Woolworths, Lehman Brothers, DeLorean, they're all gone. They were the market leaders in their heyday, but now they're all gone, out of business. The question is, why? Well, when I do my live seminars, you know, I ask people the question, you know, have you ever failed? And what did you fail at? And why? And the answers that I get often are, well, it's the economy, or we didn't have enough people, or the right people. It was wrong leadership, not enough money, not enough customers, government regulations, too much competition. I'm sure as you think about your aesthetic practices and you're trying to grow and compete in this increasingly competitive marketplace, some of these same issues come up for you as well. Well, if you threw a lasso around these, you could probably categorize them as not enough resources. All these are resources, things that we need to become successful, whether it's the right talent or, you know, the right customer base, not enough government regulations, etc. But the fact of the matter is, it's really a lack of resourcefulness. So the idea of resourcefulness, by definition, is this ability to deal skillfully and creatively with situations and difficulties. But the fact of the matter is, and that's the Webster definition, but the fact of the matter is, resourcefulness is a belief system. Resourcefulness is a belief system that says, regardless of what challenges lie in front of me, I have the mindset, I have the skills, I have the tenacity to make this happen. When you look at businesses that have been wildly successful over the years, when you look at Apple, Kentucky Fried Chicken, Microsoft, I just picked a handful of these that started at very difficult times and yet had many, many challenges, yet through resourcefulness, they still survived. Take, for example, Apple. When Steve Jobs took over Apple the second time, it was his second tour of duty, Apple was almost in the tank. And the only way he was able to resurrect Apple was to change the color of the iMac. Do you guys remember that? He changed the complete design. The operating system was basically the same. He just made them pink and blue and purple. And that's what people wanted. Now that created a whole new opportunity for Apple. And of course, we all know this history behind it. They took the money that they got, they invested that money, and we know of Apple today as this multimedia technology company. I don't know if you know about Walt Disney, but Walt Disney grew up in Kansas, and he was fired by the Kansas City Star, which is a newspaper, for lack of imagination. And when he started Disneyland, the whole idea was to build this great experience for families to come to. He went to 302 banks. 302, got turned down every time by 302 banks saying he was crazy. It would never work. He kept up his faith, his tenacity, his resourcefulness, and we all know what Disneyland is today. Now, do you know back in 1995 in July when the first day of Disney opened up, Disneyland, it was a disaster? It was 102 degrees in Los Angeles that day. More people came than they ever expected. I think they expected like 12,000 people, and about 28,000 showed up. They had just finished construction. The cement they had poured on the sidewalk wasn't dry yet. People were stepping in this wet cement. Most of the rides didn't work. The toilets backed up. They were out of food. They were out of water. It was a complete disaster. Day one. In fact, in Disney, they call it Black Sunday. But yet he had the resourcefulness and the tenacity to turn all that around. And of course, we know that this is the happiest place on earth today. Kentucky Fried Chicken. If you know anything about Kentucky Fried Chicken, Colonel Sanders went to 1,009 banks to get someone to buy his Kentucky Fried Chicken recipe. He rode around in his car across the country trying to seek out financial support, living in the backseat of his car. Now we know how successful Kentucky Fried Chicken is today, although a lot of health nuts may disagree with that. Zappos. I mean, who would ever believe that a woman would buy shoes online? I mean, the whole process of buying shoes is to go, you got to try them on, right? You got to get in front of the mirror, you got to try them on. No disrespect to any women in the audience. I'm the same way. But yet, Tony Hsieh and his team believed that there was a way of changing the landscape. And using resourcefulness and creativity, we all know what Zappos is today. Of course, they were bought for over $1 billion by Amazon. So this idea of resourcefulness is the core of everything that you do. Now, I read an article a couple of weeks ago in Entrepreneur Magazine that kind of struck me as it relates to the business of aesthetics. And this idea, and I've made it a little bit of a modified version of this, but I created this concept of the 5 blind spots that I think all aesthetic practices need to know about. And I'll just go through them very quickly and I'll go into detail. The first one is failure to truly understand your client's needs and wants. The second is differentiating your practice through experience. The third, and this is probably the most important thing I'm going to talk about today, is understanding that you, as the practice owner, are the most important salesperson in the company. The fourth is not anticipating change, which we'll talk about. And the fifth is trying to overcome a self-limiting psychology. So let's talk about these in detail. Failure to understand your client's needs and wants. There was a survey that was done, and actually the same survey that I'd quoted earlier was published in Aesthetic Surgery Journal, where they took a poll of physicians and they took a poll of patients and they gave them the exact same survey. And basically the survey was, tell us about your desires and needs and wants as an aesthetic patient. And the physicians were given a survey that said, what do you think your patients want? The results were startling. You can see it here. It says, surprisingly, the surveys revealed that what patients' preferences were differed widely from what the physicians thought the patients wanted. How's that possible? And if we're in the business of trying to understand and meet patients' needs because we want them to pay cash for our services, how is it even possible that we don't know what they want? I mean, any business, whether you're in financial planning or whether you're in the restaurant business or you're in aesthetics, you really need to understand what your clients want. I found this a very startling finding, and frankly, probably something that still exists today, even though this was dated back in 2011. Even more startling was it was worth noting that patients said they would pay more if the result correlated with something that they wanted, a longer lasting result. I can't tell you how many of my clients that I counsel and coach tell me that patients won't pay for treatments. Patients won't pay for Botox. Patients don't want to pay for their fillers. Patients don't want to pay for their lasers. When the fact of the matter is, if you're able to understand in a deep, deep way what the patients are looking for, they'll gladly pay for your services. But understanding patients' needs takes time. A lot of my clients I talk to don't take the time to spend talking to their patients. They would rather be moving on to the next thing. Many of my clients are dermatologists, which I realize our poll doesn't have as a smaller number of dermatologists, but most physicians are trained to diagnose, see a patient, diagnose, and move on, right? But that's not what aesthetics is all about. Aesthetics is about reaching down deep and understanding the real reason why patients have come to see you. And many a times they're deep emotions that you have to uncover. And the only way you can do that is by taking time. I have some of my clients, which stuns me, that say, I don't do the consult, I have my nurses do the consult. I will tell you that's a huge mistake. Now, nurses are absolutely integral to the part of the aesthetic consult. Don't misunderstand me. But you as the business owner, you as the treater, you as the practitioner, you as the leader need to reach out and spend time with those patients, asking good questions, not closed-ended questions like, what bothers you the most, or what can I do for you today? Come up with something more creative. Come up with something that puts you in the mindset of a practical psychologist, because that's really what it is. And remember, if you're able to uncover what those real reasons are, those patients will fall in love with you. And with that comes their desire and enthusiasm to pay handsomely for your services. And remember, you're not charging for Botox. You're charging for your services, your hands, your skills, your expertise, your training. The other thing you need to be a master at, and we'll touch on this a little bit later, is this skill of influencing. a lot of my physicians shy away from really creating a great influence with their patients. And that's a huge mistake, because influencing ties to point number 4, and it's this idea of this transference of emotion. In my live seminars, I always show this series of photographs to my attendees, my participants, and I ask them, what's similar in every one of these pictures? And I get things like enthusiasm, excitement, passion, and those are all very good explanations as to what you see here. But really, what I'm looking for from an answer is simple: blue. Now, what's blue in this picture? Who's wearing blue? The people wearing blue are the Apple employees. And what are they doing? They're transferring emotion. Most of these people stayed up all night, waited in line to buy a phone. To buy a phone. Now, this is the same phone that they could buy online and have it delivered to their house, or the same phone that they could probably go in that store 2 days later with no lines and get. But they stayed up all night to get this phone. Why? Because it's not about the phone, it's about the experience. What these Apple employees are doing is they're transferring emotion. They're cheering for these people who just paid $600 for this phone or this iPad or whatever they just purchased. The point here is transfer of emotion reinforces the purchase. There is no buyer's remorse in any one of these pictures. There's nothing but joy. And these employees are reinforcing that. Now, I'm not suggesting that every time a patient comes out of an exam room after treatment, your employees all stand up and cheer, but it might not be a bad idea. It's the idea of transference of emotion and excitement that makes the difference in creating a successful practice. And it's easily spoken here. Chad, I'm going to get out of this for a second and see if I can move this box out of the way. There we go. So Charles Green, who's a trusted advisor associate, basically says that people vastly prefer to work with people that they trust, who care about them, who show and pay attention to them. This gets back to what I was saying before. You've got to spend time with your patients during that consult, because nothing can turn off a relationship faster than someone feeling that there's mistrust, that they can't really trust or believe in who you are. So this idea of transference of emotion is really, really key as it relates to creating this great environment for these patients. Now, I don't know if many of you understand or know about the 6 human needs, but they're extremely valuable in thinking through how you're communicating with your patients. I kind of walk my attendees through these 6 human needs, and I'd like to do it at this time for you as well, because I think once you understand how these work and how they affect a person's emotions and their decision-making process, it'll change the way you speak to your patients. It'll change the way you handle the consult. And the 6 human needs are basically these. The first one is certainty. The second one is uncertainty. The third is significance. The fourth is love and connection. 5 and 6 are growth and contribution. Certainty is let me take a step back just 1 second. I want to emphasize that everyone has all 6 of these needs. Everyone. Doesn't matter whether you live in the United States or some foreign country, everyone has these basic 6 human needs. What's really interesting, though, is most of us have 2 dominant ones. And once you're able to figure out what those dominant ones are and you apply your consult and your communication to them, that's where the money's made. Now let's go through them. Certainty is this need to be recognized, this need to be certain that you are okay. So if you're the kind of person that goes onto an airplane and the first thing you do is look for the exits on the plane, you have a high need for certainty. If you check into a hotel and the first thing you do is check on the door, where are the exits, you have a high need for certainty. The need of certainty is to know that you will be okay. Now, the second human need is uncertainty. So the concept here is that if everything in your life was planned, if you knew what was going to happen at every minute, every second of every day, what would life be? I can't hear you, but most of you are probably saying boring. And if you said that, that's correct. So uncertainty actually is a bit of spice in our life. And we all like that. I always ask my audience, who likes surprises? Everybody raises their hand. And I say, that's BS. You only want surprises that you want, right? We all get surprises that we don't want, especially if we're business owners. But certainty is certainly an important human need to understand. The third is significance. I will tell you that I bet you 80 to 90% of the patients you see, this may be one of the dominant human needs they have. The need for significance is the need to feel recognized, to feel important, to feel wanted. That's the need of significance. Steve Wynn, who owns the Wynn Resorts, Wynn Hotels, and basically revolutionized the Las Vegas Strip, stated once that this one single human need, 80% of his business comes from making people feel significant. Because when you feel significant, you're willing to spend money. And we all know how successful the Wynn Hotels are. Love and connection. Love and connection is a very special human need to understand, because everyone, regardless of who you are or what your past has been, has the need for love and connection. Whether it's a human being with a pet or whatever it is, love and connection is a very significant human need. Now, through the course of if someone is speaking a lot about their children, a lot about their family, that is something that as you're communicating with them, you want to reiterate back to them as it relates to the importance of how important love and connection is to them. And then the last two I call kind of more needs of the spirit or the heart, a growth and connection. To me, if you're not growing, you're dying. And the very reason why you're participating in this webinar is because you've got this need to grow. And the beauty of 5 and 6 is that as you grow, as you increase your knowledge, your skill, your expertise, you have this wonderful opportunity to give back, to show gratitude, to contribute. And I think this is really where the magic is in aesthetics. When people understand that they're building their skill sets, they're building their strengths in a mindset of not to make money. Let me just say that again, a mindset not to make money, but to give back, but to contribute. Make these people feel terrific. Make them feel significant. Find out what those two dominant human needs are through that consult and give them that, and they will become raving fans. And to me, the definition of a raving fan is someone that is loyal to you, that is dedicated to you, someone that will tell their friends about you, someone that will forgive you if you make a mistake. Figure out through your consult what are the two dominant human needs, and build your treatment and build your consult around that. Well, the question is, how do I do that? Through good questions. I said before, ask good questions. Don't ask superficial questions just so you can get to the treatment. Ask questions that get to the heart, to the soul of why they're there. And here's the clue. If you emit an emotion, you hit the spot. You hit the jackpot. If you get them to cry, you know you've hit the right spot. You get that transference of emotion throughout your consult, you've got a raving fan. In fact, speaking of Steve Wynn, I think this is a great quote. He says, "The strongest force on earth is something that affects a person's self-esteem." You can make someone feel good about themselves, they will love you for it. They will be loyal to you forever. Back in 2008, when the whole Las Vegas Strip was tanking because of the economy, the Wynn and the Encore were rocking and rolling because Steve Wynn figured out a way to touch his people in a very, very special way. He wasn't getting the Kmart rollers to come to his casinos. He was getting the high-end people. And the whole theory and the whole philosophy of how they treated those guests is the word no never existed. All right, the second thing is differentiating through experience. What's really important to understand is there's only really two major concepts in business that you need to understand, and that's the concept of innovation and marketing. Peter Drucker, who in his day was considered the godfather of modern day business, basically said that there are only two really major functions in the business enterprise that are important, and that's innovation and marketing. If you can figure out a way to innovate and you can figure out a way to market, that's where you get the results. And it doesn't matter whether you're an aesthetic practitioner in Des Moines, Iowa, or whether you're running Apple Computer, it's the same concept and the same philosophy. So the question is, what is innovation? When I talk to my clients at our live seminars, people will kind of get a little bit blown away because they think innovation is basically the iPhone or the iMac or some type of high-end sophisticated technological advancement. And it is. Those are all examples of innovation. But innovation in your practice may be something very small and very subtle that separates and differentiates you from everybody else. And really, by definition, innovation is finding the way to meet your patient's needs and wants and add more value to their lives than anybody else. Again, a lot of this sounds like psychology, but business is psychology. It is nothing but psychology. And I'll tell you something else. Business is about the spirit. If you focus on making people happy, adding more value to their lives, everything else falls into place. Know their wants and their needs more deeply than even they do, and deliver that in a way that catches them off guard. And you'll be amazed at how crazy innovative you can be. Fulfill those needs beyond their expectations, and you'll have a raving fan for life. But it's like going one step further than just understanding what they need, because sometimes they don't even know they have a problem. So if you can help your clients or your patients identify a problem that they don't even have, that's even more successful. Here's an example. I don't know if anybody knows about Great Clips or have you gotten your hair cut at Great Clips, but I use this analogy at our live seminars as well. Great Clips as a business is basically a no-frills, low-cost hair salon. You go in there, you get your hair cut. I think their slogan is, get in, get out, get on with your life. You don't need an appointment. You get the haircut when you want it. It's not based on somebody else's schedule. You just show up. And they've been a very successful business model. But the one flaw, the one Achilles heel of Great Clips is the fact that you run into problems with the appointment time. Nobody wants to sit in a lobby, waiting for the next available, salon or stylist to become available. So the geniuses at Great Clips kind of came up with the creation of this very simple app where you can actually check in online. There's no waiting. You get your haircut when you want it. You just show up. But basically, you go online and you see all of the Great Clips in your area. It shows you exactly how to get there, and most importantly, it shows you, what the wait time is, how quickly it'll take for you to get there and get your haircut. The idea being, when you show up, there is no wait. You just go get your haircut. And not only that, this app will actually show you not only directions how to get there, but as you're driving there, it'll show you how much time you have before your haircut actually takes place. Very cool and very genius idea. So this really plays into their, get in, get out, and get on with your life. You just show up. Now, the other thing that's very interesting is there are Great Clips all over the country. And there are variations between stylists and things like that. And those of you that are very particular about how the way you get your haircut, you're concerned that if you go to your Great Clips, someplace else, you're not going to get the haircut that you want. So what they also created in their app is this whole concept of clip notes. And the idea here is that we know your haircut anywhere you go. The idea being that they've put into a database information and specifications about the way you like your hair cut. So it doesn't matter whether you're getting your hair cut in San Francisco, Los Angeles, New York, or Tallahassee, Florida. There is an interactive database that goes back and forth. Bob Rullo shows up at Great Clips in Santa Clara, California. I can get my hair cut pretty close to the way I like it. Again, giving customers an experience that they couldn't forget. Now, one of the things that we teach at our Aesthetic Blueprint program that relates very specific to aesthetics is this idea of using golden ratio calipers. I don't know how many of you understand or know about the concept of phi proportions, but there are many people out there that believe that you can actually measure beauty. And of course, it boils down to using this very small, simple tool that dates way back to the days of the Renaissance era. And it's used today by architects and designers in many, many different industries. But the calipers is basically measuring the intercanthal distance and then getting the phi, which actually is a scientific measure, that you can use to measure the height of the forehead, the width of the brow, the length of the nose, a very, very powerful tool. Now, many of you probably have a great aesthetic eye. Many of you probably are able to look at a patient's face and understand, you know, this idea of the beauty, the beautiful face, the beautiful mask. But think of it in terms of the patient. Now, most patients go to an aesthetic practice and they go through the consult, and the doctor may, you know, explain to them, you know, kind of what they're, you know, what they offer as far as treatments, and interact with the patient, trying to understand whether it's, you know, something on their nasolabial fold or something in their masseters that bothers them, just trying to uncover what the problems really are. But think about the impact and kind of the change of dynamic when you pull out calipers and you start measuring someone's face as part of the consult. Completely different change. I liken it to the fact that if you've ever been fitted for a suit, or if you've ever had a tailored dress made for you, what did that make you feel like? It made you feel special. It made you feel like this was something that was being made specifically for you. This is what we teach during the aesthetic blueprint. In fact, our calipers are widely used during our seminars, and many of our attendees actually go back to their practice and incorporate these calipers into their practice. I'm not trying to sell calipers here, by the way. I'm just trying to show you some of the small things that we teach at the aesthetic blueprint that can make a huge difference in that relationship you build with that patient. The other thing we do, many of you probably know that I work with Dr. Kent Remington, who's a cosmetic dermatologist in Calgary, Alberta, Canada, as well as Dr. Arthur Swift, who's a plastic surgeon in Montreal. Both Swift and Remington are huge believers in 5 proportions and using 5 proportions. But the other thing that they do in their practice, which I think is very innovative, is they tell the patient before they come in for their consult is to bring in a photograph of themselves when they were in their 20s. Now, the concept here is to not try to make the patient look 20, especially if they're 65. But the idea is to do a side-by-side comparison of the patient's baseline photo of today and show a side-by-side with what they looked like 20 years ago. And what you're able to see, and more importantly, show them, is areas of loss and area of change. Because most patients are monofocused. They come in with one specific thing that's bothering them. But yet the physician, through this idea of comparing before the 20-year-old, you know, with the current baseline, it's a great way side by side really where the areas of change have occurred. And again, not to make them look 20 again, but the idea is to show them that restoring the face is like restoring a painting. You don't restore just a part of the painting, you restore the whole thing. If it's a Model T car, you're not going to restore just the fenders on the front and not the back. It would look ridiculous. It's the same thing. Why would you just treat a nasolabial fold and let the patients go? Ultimately, they're not going to be happy. This is part of the consult that makes a huge difference and I think is very innovative. Okay, so what is marketing? Marketing is getting people to do business with you, seeking out your services in a way that's going to make them feel special. Here's an important thing, and if you write anything down on this talk today, please write this down. People don't buy products and services. They buy emotions, they buy identity, they buy an experience. The guy on the right is not coming out of Walmart. He's coming out of Apple. This guy waited all night long for a phone. Rain, snow, sleet, whatever it was, he waited all line for this phone. Why do people stand in line for a phone? It's not for the phone. It's to have the emotion, the ability, the significance to tell their friends, I stood in line all night to be one of the first ones in my city, my town, to get an iPhone. This is the magic of marketing. People want to tell their customers what they do and how they do it. When in fact, people don't care about that. The brain can only absorb so many facts and figures. But when you start telling people why you do what you do, let me say that again. When you start telling people why you do what you do, what's your purpose, what's your belief, why do you get up in the morning? That touches their emotions. That makes them feel like they've got something they can identify with. That's an experience. I have one client that actually has the door to the office locked during office hours. When the patient comes to the door, they are greeted by a concierge who actually walks them through the entire office process. They don't sit down in the waiting room. They bypass the desk. They are treated like you would feel like you were treated if you were at a Ritz-Carlton or a Four Seasons or some high-end hotel. The experience that they have, and by the way, they bake cookies in the morning, and the smell of cookies radiates through the office. Everything they do from the time that they get to the office to the time they leave are touch points for not only the concierge, but the physician and the staff to make that person feel excited and ensure that they have a fantastic experience. How many doctor's offices can a patient say they go to get that kind of experience? The goal here is to make your practice different. Think of ways that you can be different. I did a little survey just the other day. I sat down on my computer and I Googled cities that began with M. Don't ask me why I picked M, I just picked M. And I went to those cities and I typed in cosmetic dermatologist or aesthetic practitioner just to see what Google would pull up. And the first two that pulled up, I went right to their website and I looked at their websites, and they were all the same. It was all about, you know, we do Mohs, we do Botox, this is how we do it, we've got this laser, we've got that laser. We talk about how we do it with professionalism and care and privacy and all that kind of stuff, but they don't say why they do it. Tell people why, and you've got a raving fan. You will grow your practice geometrically if you start touching people's emotions and connecting with their identity. Now, here's a pretty interesting question. How important is marketing? Here are 3 brand leaders in their respective industries: McDonald's, Disneyland, which I talked about before, and Starbucks. Let me ask you this question, and I ask my audiences this question. Does McDonald's make the best hamburger? I would argue no. Is Disneyland the best place to get an experience for a thrill ride? I mean a ride that's fun, where your hair's, you know, wind's in your face and your hair's blowing back. Is Disney the place to do that? How about Starbucks? Is Starbucks the best place to get a cup of coffee? A lot of people tell you no. So if that's the case, why are they the market leaders? If they have subpar products, why are they the market leader? The answer is great marketing. They have figured out a way to touch people's emotions, to give people an experience that they'll go back and tell their friends about. I mean, the Golden Arches, my kids, when they were younger, they could see the McDonald's Golden Arches, you know, from a quarter mile away, and they couldn't even say the word McDonald's, but they knew exactly what it was. Because when you went into a McDonald's as a child, they made it a great experience. Hamburglar and all those other things that made them feel special. And that's the way the commercials were too. Disneyland, what's Disneyland called? The happiest place on earth. Now, for most dads out there, you might disagree with that, right? But for your kids, it is. Starbucks, it's a place to meet, right? It's not about the coffee. It's a place to be seen. It's a place to meet. And it doesn't necessarily have to involve alcohol. That's the business that they're in, and that's the way they market their products. The only thing you need to understand about marketing, just one thing, it's not about you. As I said before, understand what people want, understand their needs, connect your services, your product, your skills with what they need, and you've got a raving fan. The question becomes, what part of the market do you want to own? What is your X factor? And that's the question I ask every one of my clients. Because again, if you look at websites, and I think websites are very telling as to the mindset and the kind of the thought process of what business are you really in. And by the way, if you come to one of my seminars, that's one of the very questions I ask my audience. What business are you in? And everybody say, well, I'm in aesthetic medicine, or I'm in plastic surgery. Yeah, that's what you do. But why are you doing it? Figure out why you do it, and everything else falls into place. I don't know if you ever watched Seinfeld. I'm not sure. I should have asked one of the survey questions, Chad. You know, what's the average age of the people participating in this? But those of you that remember Seinfeld, there was a wonderful episode a few years back called The Opposite. And one of the characters, George Costanza, was sitting in a cafe complaining about his life, and he says, every decision I've ever made in my entire life has been wrong. And his friend Jerry says, well, if every instinct you have is wrong, then the opposite would have to be right. And of course, this episode goes on where George changes everything in his life. He does the exact opposite of what he's thinking, and his life changes dramatically to the positive. I joke with my attendees that I tell them, I said, you should follow this when you're marketing your product, when you're marketing your practices, because whatever instinct, whatever you're doing now, do the opposite and see what happens. And I say that kind of tongue-in-cheek, but I will tell you that a lot of my clients want to advertise through email and things like that, and those are all powerful resources to use. But you have to understand that if you're going to incite someone to come to your practice, to buy your services, to want to meet with you, it's not giving them a discount or a Groupon for a laser treatment or for Botox. That's not the strategy. If that's what you're doing right now, do the opposite of that. What is the opposite of that? Think about educational-based marketing. Be the local expert in your town. Share something, give something that is an expertise that you have. And you'll be amazed at how fast people will raise eyebrows and say, I want to get to know more about this person. Do the opposite of what you're doing now and see what happens. All right, here's probably one of the most important things that I want to emphasize to you, and that is you are the most important salesperson on your team. I'm amazed at how many of my clients I talk to that say, you know, I have my nurses do the selling, I don't sell, I don't believe in upselling, and things like that. That is a huge mistake. Here is an example of some of the most influential leaders in our society. Some that are past, some are still alive today. But the point is, each and every one of these people were great leaders, and the reason why they're great leaders is because they had the ability to influence. Don't think of selling as a car salesman is trying to manipulate the facts to get you to do something. Think of leadership as influence, because that's exactly what leadership is, and influencing is selling. Now, if you have children, if you have a spouse, if you have a significant other, if you own your own business, if you're interacting with anybody in a positive way, you are selling, you are influencing. So if the word selling bugs you, put it aside and think of the power of influencing. Because influencing is a deep caring about someone, about a relationship. It's understanding them at a gut level. What are their wants? What are their needs? And mostly, how can you help them? That's what influencing is. If you're able to manipulate and turn people off, which is what traditional selling has been, that's not what this is about. What this is about is being able to influence someone through this amazing skill called influence. Now, the important thing you have to understand is to influence someone, you have to already be influenced. If you don't believe what your practice is able to do for people, and you're just kind of phoning it in, or you're just worried about the technical aspects of what you do, you'll never influence your customers, your patients. You'll never influence your staff. To touch someone, to have impact on someone, you have to be touched. You have to feel that emotion. That emotion has to come out of you. And you've got to think of influence both internally and externally. Most of us think about selling, if they do sell, it's to the patients. We want the patient experience to be fantastic. We want the patient experience to be this. We want it to be that. And that's dead on. That's all about the external influencing that you're trying to do. But don't forget the importance of the people in your office. If you get the people in your office to get on the same page that you're on, and I can't tell you how many of my clients don't have this right now. They find themselves very, very frustrated in the sense that they're doing their best to create this exciting practice, but they don't have the buy-in of the staff, or the staff is not as passionate about it as they are. And the way they try to influence their staff to become more excited is through money. And money's not it. I mean, obviously, financial incentives are great, but people don't work for money. They'll take your money, but to really make a difference, to really influence patients and make it feel like it's part of a team, they have to buy into what you're trying to do. They have to be influenced by you. You have to influence them. I'll make this fast because I'm running out of time, but it's about creating a compelling future that excites not only you, but the people around you. Get people to believe and get excited about what you're all about. Creating a culture. I don't know if you guys know anything about Jim Valvano. He's the man named after the V Foundation is named after him. He was a basketball coach at NC State University. The first game he coached as a basketball coach, he lost by 77 points. 77 points his team lost. And talk about resourcefulness. You talk about a guy that turned things around. Just a handful of years later, they won the national championship. But the one thing he did, what was most amazing when I read his biography, was that those of you who know anything about basketball, the way you celebrate, kind of the trademark, the milestone of winning the championship is after the game is over, you climb up the ladder and you cut down the nets of the basket, and you put as you can see in the picture, you put the nets around your neck. What Jim Valvano did is he actually took his players in the middle of the season. They had not won a championship, made them put their game uniforms on. They went upstairs to the court. There was no one around, no basketballs. He got out a ladder, he got out scissors, and he made every player climb up that ladder and cut a piece of the net off until the entire net came down. He was actually creating the vision of what it would feel like, and they were cheering like crazy, what it would feel like to be a champion. And he explained it graphically. He kept talking about it over and over and over again. It was a consistent message, and his players eventually started buying into it. And of course, again, a handful of years later, they won the national championship. That's how you create a culture. That's how you influence your team. Here's the last couple of points I want to make, Chad, and I'll get off of this. Not anticipating change. It is so critical that in a business, you're looking at what's coming next. Those businesses that I showed you earlier with Kodak and Lehman Brothers, after 150 years, the reason why they failed, besides a lack of resourcefulness, is they didn't anticipate change. Because winners anticipate and losers just react. And by the time you react, in this day and age, in this society, in this economy, it's game over. Quick example is Cirque du Soleil. Cirque du Soleil is basically a carnival. It's a circus, right? But yet there's cirques all over the country, all over the world. Because when you look at circuses in the old days, it was about animal training and clowns and things like that. It was very clear at the day and age that that kind of entertainment was going away. But the circus industry could still flourish if you came up with a new, innovative way to create and recreate the circus experience. So what Cirque did was they got a group of acrobatic people together, trained them. They put in these great shows with this outstanding music, a lot of colors, a lot of lights. Gone were the elephants, gone were the tigers. Anybody who was worried about, animal cruelty had no problem coming to Cirque du Soleil. By the way, those horses on the left and right are fake. Last but not least, and this is probably the most important thing I want to leave with you, is this idea of limiting psychology. The number one chokehold of any business, any practice, is the psychology and the skills of the leader. 80% of the problem usually lies within the psychology of the practice owner. I tell my clients that every aesthetic practice has mirrors all over the place, right? I always tell my clients, I said, if you want to figure out what the biggest problem is in your practice, is go pick up a mirror and look at it. That's your problem. If you're able to kind of get over some of these self-limiting doubts that you can't grow your practice, or patients won't pay for this, or it's the economy or industries dictating this or dictating that, if you can get over that and use your resources to find a way to get through these things, you'll be amazed at how geometrically you can grow your practice. Here's a real quick example, Blockbuster Video. Those of you that have been around a while know that Blockbuster Video was the market leader in the video industry for the longest time. They owned the marketplace, but it was kind of a brick and mortar type of offering. You went in, you got your video, you watched it, you brought it back. If you were late, you paid a late fee. If it wasn't rewound, you paid a rewinding fee. It was a ridiculous business model, but they owned the market. They owned the market. It was retail. Now, what came along back in 1998 was Netflix. Netflix got launched, and if you don't know anything about Netflix and the history of Netflix, they literally offered themselves up for $50 million to Blockbuster, who was a multi-billion-dollar company at the time. And Blockbuster basically laughed at Netflix, saying, you're just of no interest to us. In fact, I found this quote very interesting from the CEO at Blockbuster at the time. He said, I've been frankly confused by the fascination that everybody has with Netflix. Netflix doesn't really have or do anything that we don't do ourselves. Isn't that interesting? Now, he also goes on to say, and this is what's important, I don't care how many movies are available to me as my personal taste as a customer, I want to watch the new stuff. Do you see that? This guy was thinking about himself, not about his customer. How many times do we make that mistake? You change your psychology, you change your business. We all know it's happened, right? I mean, Netflix has roared to this amazing success story. They binge watching has become a new term in our vocabulary. And what happened to Blockbuster? Gone, gone. Market leader, gone. All because of the psychology of the owner, of the leader. If he had anticipated and recognized, or even tried, to absorb what Netflix was bringing to the table, it would be wildly successful. But his own psychology kept him from doing that. So, 5 blind spots: failure to understand your client's needs, failure to differentiate through a great experience, failure to remember that you are the most important salesperson, failure to not anticipate change, and struggling with a limited psychology are the major 5 things. Here's my blueprint to you, and I'm done after this. If you learn anything at all from this, take away these 6 things. Master the skill of influence. Go online, watch TED Talks. There are so many free things that you can really look at to really understand this concept of influence. The second thing is welcome problems. Nobody likes problems, but if you look at problems as a weightlifter lifting weights, and the problems of the weights, that's how you get stronger. And I will tell you that most of your biggest breakthroughs come when you're trying to figure out a problem. That's how the aesthetic blueprint got built. We were trying to figure out a problem, and I won't go into detail here, but as we evolve through our problem solving, we have this wonderful product now that people just rave about called the aesthetic blueprint. The third thing is proximity. I should say is power, not if power. Proximity is power. And what's important here to understand is surround yourself with people who are already successful. Don't surround yourself with people that do what you do or think like you think or pat you on the back and say, oh, everything's okay with the world. Surround yourself with players. Surround yourself with people that think beyond you, that think more successfully than you, that are successful even in a completely different space, and learn as much as you can from them. Focus on positive intelligence. If you say it can't be done, it must be done. And that's the mindset that only you can have. Think about Walt Disney after 302 turndowns, or 1,009 turndowns from Colonel Sanders. That is having a positive attitude. That's something that you can do. Live with constant and never-ending improvement. Constantly figure out ways to work with your team to make your practice better. Don't be those same boring websites that I saw where it's just we do mows and all these other things. And last but not least, show gratitude. Be thankful for everything that you've got, because when you're grateful, it's hard to get into a bad state. When you're grateful, it's hard to get down on yourself. When you're grateful, all you can do is think about how great you can make the world. And I'll make the last slide be what Maya Angelou said, and that is, people forget what you said, forget what you did, but they'll never forget the way you make them feel. Thank you.
Perfect, Bob. Thank you so much for that wonderful presentation. Hope everyone got as much out of that as I have, and I've heard this presentation before and specifically asked Bob to give that today. You know, it truly is about the emotion. I've seen over the years where, just as you described, Bob, where the doctors at the offices are focused on maybe the doctor too much or the new machine as opposed to people. And people don't care that somebody bought a $150,000 machine that may be able to do amazing treatments of whatever it might be on the laser side, or it doesn't matter. You know, name your machine. At the end of the day, people want to buy. They buy emotion. They want to feel like this is the office that can take care of me, that has my best interest. You're selling that vision, and you're absolutely right. So we're out of time today, but I do appreciate everyone's attendance and participation today. I do want to announce just one thing really quick. Bob mentioned the aesthetic blueprint meeting that he runs. I've attended this meeting, and both Kent Remington and Arthur Swift, both doctors, are phenomenal presenters and on their hands-on course. Bob did mention to me that he has a few openings left at his course coming up in a couple of weeks, June 24th through the 26th. It'll be in Newport Beach. If you'd like more information, you can email Bob at the number listed here, or visit the website at theaestheticblueprint.com. I will be there and hope to see some of you there as well. Again, thank you for your attendance today. If you have any questions, feel free to email me as well, chad.erickson@advicemedia.com, and I look forward to seeing you down the road. Thanks, everyone. Have a wonderful day.